This episode of the Pain Education Corner is sponsored by the Comella Foundation. The Comella Foundation is committed to relieving pain naturally using osteopathic healing principles. Here at the Comella Foundation, we envision a world where people achieve their maximum potential by being empowered with knowledge and skills to heal themselves and others. This information is to be used for educational purposes only and not to be construed as medical advice. If you have any questions or concerns, please consult a licensed healthcare professional. Hello, it's Bill, the knee pain guru, and welcome to the Pain Education Podcast brought to you by the Comella Foundation. Today we have a special guest, Andi Locke Mears, who's going to share with us. Now, before we arranged this, I had never heard of Germanic New Medicine. So this is brand new to me. So Andi, I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's wonderful to be here.
Okay. Well, share with us. Normally everybody that's on the show has like a unique path to get here, to get to this place. Would you share, like, how did your life lead you to the Germanic New Medicine approach?
New medicine, yes. And don't feel bad that you've never heard of this, because most people have not. It is brand new in America, literally, and North America, and it's not that well known in Europe either. So, and that's where it originates. So okay. No worries there. But I took a very circuitous route to be here. Been in the healing field, wellness field since the mid 70s. Okay. And finally got super serious about it in the early 90s, and went around North America, literally getting different kinds of certifications, homeopathy and nutrition and herbal medicine, lots of different things, and just kept, putting another feather in my cap, and finally opened up a wellness center in 2006. Mm-hmm. That was in Maine. It was very successful from the day I opened, and it kept me extremely busy. Around 2008, I started realizing, well, before that, at that point, I'm still learning. I'm still getting trainings and certifications. And I realized that every time I couldn't help someone, I'm like, why can't I help them with this diet, this herb, or whatever it is that they're working on with all of my toolbox? Why couldn't I help everyone? Mm-hmm. So I was really perplexed, kept getting new certifications, just kept adding to that toolbox. And then around 2008, I came across something on the internet that said German New Medicine. And I thought, what is that? I've never heard of it. And so what they said on the website, whatever website it was, made no sense. And yet intuitively, I was like, okay, this is important. I don't know how, I don't know what it is, but it's important. So I thought, well, I'm just going to buy the book and I'll read it. And I was working 65 plus hours a week in my wellness center. So it's not like I had a lot of spare time. So I bought the book, and let me find it. It's right here. You'll see the chart behind me is the chart, and this is it in book form. And this is kind of what it looks like.
Very detailed.
It's extremely detailed.
It's not a picture book.
It's not, even though there's graphics in it, they make no sense. And so I got the book thinking, okay, I'll figure out what this is and see if it's anything I really need to learn. Well, the book made no sense. I did not know how to understand it. I had no framework on what is this. So it took a year for me to, every few months, I'd pull it out. It's like, okay, I can figure this out. And I couldn't. So after a year, it was in early 2009, I said, okay, I just have to figure out what this is, because it seems important, but I have no idea how. So I went up to Canada, and in the first 30 minutes of the first workshop, I totally understood how to read the book. It was a key and a lock, and it just opened it right up. I got back home on Monday night, and Tuesday morning, I started using this with my clients. I barely understood it, but it's like, I've got the book, I can figure this out. So I started working immediately with it. And when I did, I realized it was the missing piece. For not just me and my modalities. I was a traditional naturopath at this point, but for everyone, whether you're a physician, a massage therapist, a hypnotherapist, it fills in all the gaps.
Okay. This is great. What you said the mid 70s is when you started getting involved in
Health and wellness.
Health and wellness. What was the motivation for you? What was the open the path? Some people have just a genuine curiosity for things. Me, I had to dislocate my left knee 4 times in order to be like, oh,
Right.
So was there anything on your end that happened or going on in your life? Or some people, it's like, well, my grandmother was telling me about this stuff or something like that. So what was your path?
I know. And people ask me that, they all think I had some horrible disease that I healed myself from, and I didn't. However, I will say my birth set me up for this.
Okay.
And so I had no choice but to follow this kind of path, because my birth literally set me up for it. So I was born, and I was really angry because I was ready to be born, but the doctor wasn't there yet. So the nurses made sure I didn't come out.
Oh.
And I was really upset. My grandmother, who was there, said I looked like a prize fighter when I was born.
Get the fists up.
I was pretty much fists up, yeah. Then when I was age 7, the local physician who lived in our neighborhood stopped by because I had a sore throat. And he came in, and by that time, age 7, this is the mid 60s, I'm thinking, something's going on. I'm not sure what. And he asked me, do you have any allergies? And I said, well, I think I'm allergic to red candy because I get a rash after I eat red candy. Now, this was before dyes were even known about that could have caused issues. He looked at me like I was crazy. Anyway, he prescribed a, medicine for me, and he said, it's just like red candy. And then he did this thing with his eye like this. And I didn't know what that meant. He winked at me, but I didn't know what that meant. What I'm thinking is, this guy is an idiot. I just told him I can't eat that, and he gives it to me. It's like, so right away from the minute I was born, I did not believe in the medical model we have currently. By age 12, I was interested in holistic health. By 17, I was teaching other people how to eat properly, what I thought was properly. That's my story.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I believe if we're clear on our path and we have that supportive environment, then we could just walk on our path and do our thing. But sometimes we didn't have that supportive environment growing up or whatever it was. So the injury or the disease or whatever it is in our life is a course correction, or at least an opportunity for a course correction. So I'm glad to hear you didn't need to course correct.
Totally agree with you. No.
Okay. That's awesome. I love that. So tell me, let's dig into the Germanic new medicine approach.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
So there are 3 names that you'll find on the internet: German New Medicine, GNM, Germanic New Medicine, or Germanische Heilkunde, which is German for roughly Germanic healing knowledge. Okay, so the story starts in the late 70s, 1978, in fact, and it follows one man, a physician, a German physician, who received a phone call one day that his teenage son had been shot accidentally while he was on vacation in Italy. So he and his wife, obviously rushed to their son's side. And after 4 agonizing months, his son died in his arms. Now, here he is, a physician, traditionally trained, very smart man, had developed patents that are still used today, surgical instruments forward thinker, an amazing man. His son dies. A short time after that, he had testicular cancer. He was diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Ouch.
And he's like, okay, wait a minute. I don't understand why I have this. I've always been healthy, but I had this huge trauma and now I have a diagnosis. There's got to be a correlation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I might go to body, mind, spirit. He's not going there. He's not going
German.
There. He's a German physician.
Yeah, very structured. Yes.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. Even though he definitely had, an ability about him that was very unusual. He also had a degree in theology and he spoke ancient languages, So, I mean, who does this, right? In their spare time of becoming an MD.
What was his name? His
name is Dr. Reich Gerd Hammer. Dr. Hammer.
Okay.
Yep. So he had surgery and he got through his cancer and he was just convinced that there was some correlation here. So by this time he was working at the University of Munich. He was working with cancer patients. And they had that new invention called a CT scan. So he's like, I'm going to look at people's brains. Maybe there's something there that talks about how we all have cancer. So he did CT scans of everyone in his clinic, and he saw in everyone's CT scan a circle, a lesion, like a targeted ring formation in different areas of the brain. What was that? So he started talking with his patients. And he learned that all of them had had some sort of trauma prior to their diagnosis. Then he realized that all of the men with testicular cancer had all had a profound loss conflict. They had all lost someone who was close to them. So he started to really look at, well, what kind of trauma did they have? And he's taking their CT scan, the trauma that they had, and he starts linking it together. This took a while. And he realized that everyone who had the circle in the same area in the brain all had the same kind of cancer. They'd all had the same trauma. The circle in the brain was in the same location, and they all had the same diagnosis of cancer. So there were no exceptions to this.
And what was the trauma? It was a loss or?
For testicular cancer, yes. It was a profound loss conflict. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is show you the heart and soul of GNM, and I will share my screen to do that.
Oh yeah, we're all set. I think you're able to do that.
Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right, so this is the two-phase pattern or two-phase diagram in GNM, and it really explains Dr. Hammer's findings. So you'll see a horizontal line through the middle here. Think of this as, here's kind of separates our daytime from our nighttime nervous system. So over here, this is us. We go through a circadian rhythm in every 24-hour cycle. Above the line is our sympathetic nervous system, our daytime nervous system. Below the line is our parasympathetic nervous system, our nighttime go to sleep, rest, and digest. Then we have a 24-hour cycle. So in here, we're awake, we're asleep, we're awake, we're asleep. And we all have that kind of rhythm. And then we have some sort of shock. It's something unexpected that shocks our nervous system. He called it a DHS after his son, Dirk Hammer syndrome. So what happens when we've had a big loss, let's say we have a job that we love and we're fired one day and we had no idea that was coming and we're just stunned. Oh my gosh, what just happened? So instantly, one of three programs of instantly the circle impacts in the brain. It's called a Hammer focus. We all have them, and it's instant upon a conflict shock that's unexpected. Instantly, one of three programs begins in the body. There are now cells multiplying somewhere in the body, cell growth. There is cell loss. We're losing cells. There's an ulceration somewhere, or there's functional loss. An organ begins to underfunction. The reason we do this is so that our body can better manage that conflict shock we just experienced. So if we're growing more cells, it's making an organ stronger so we can then be more in a position to resolve that conflict. And same with the other two. So now we've got a circle in the brain. We have a program running in the body, and we are now conflict active. And you can see in phase 1, so our nervous system is heightened. We're in fight or flight. We are running from a saber-toothed tiger. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to get another job. What am I going to do? How will I feed my family? We have all kinds of things going through our brain in that moment. And I will say that the purpose of these programs literally is to help us better manage the conflict. So at some point we resolve the conflict, and that's going to be the second green box here. Let's say 2 months later, we get another job, and that totally resolves the conflict. We're fine. But we grew cells or lost functioning for 2 months. So now our body needs to restore itself back to homeostasis. So we finished phase 1. Now we enter phase 2. So as you can see, our nervous system, we're below the line. So now we're tired, we're fatigued. There will be pain and swelling and inflammation. Because if we grew cells for 2 months, we're now going to break those down and get rid of them. We don't need them any longer. If we lost cells for 2 months, we will now patch in those holes, so to speak.
Andi, let me interrupt you just for a second. So
Sure.
The example you were using was the testicular cancer that Dr. Hammer had. He was diagnosed himself as well as other people. He made that correlation. We're talking the same about pain. Is this, or we're in the same?
I'm getting to the pain. The pain is coming next here.
Oh, the pain. Bring the pain, Andi. Go ahead.
Bring the pain on, right? Okay. So what happens is when we are in this phase A, we are replenishing the cells, we're breaking them down, we will have pain because this hurts. There's more edema and swelling in the circle and in the brain and on the organ or tissue level. This is painful. It is what we call being sick. All right.
Okay.
So we have the edema. It's in the circle in the brain. It's protecting the brain. We have the edema in some place in our body, wherever the organ impacted, whichever the organ that was impacted is. And now it's swollen, and now we have pain. Now, we know that that pain is because of the swelling, the edema that's occurring in the body, in the brain and the body. At some point, we no longer need that edema. We can get rid of it, and that is called the epileptic crisis. It's halfway through the healing phase. If we have done everything just right, we've resolved this program, we've got another job, and now we're fine, we've settled into our new job, that's when we'll go into this healing phase, this post-conflict phase. We'll be sick, we'll have pain, and at some point we get rid of it. So imagine having a fever. We've all had a fever, and then at some point your fever breaks. Well, that breaking was the epicrisis. It was the pushing out of the liquid in the circle in the brain and on the organ level. Now the pain has reduced naturally. Now we go into phase B, and this is the scarification phase. The area in the brain is kind of shirred over, the connective tissue is shirred up, and the organ and tissue are also shirred up. It's a different kind of pain. However, you can still have a pain residue here. Once you're back to your day-night cycle, you're back to what we call normatonia, your normal day-night cycle, and there's no more pain. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a perfect example. You lose your job, you have a conflict shock, you get another job, and now you resolve the whole program. What happens when that pain doesn't go away? Because that's probably what most of the folks in your line of work, that's why they're coming to you. It's like, I have all this pain, I can't get rid of it. Mm-hmm. So this gets a little bit more complicated. However, what's happening is that when we're partway through this phase, maybe we took a pharmaceutical to reduce our pain. Maybe we had another impact, another conflict shock that makes us conflict active again. At any rate, what happens is we end up on a hamster wheel.
Okay.
We have a shock that puts us back here. There's less pain here or no pain. Now we're conflict active. Now we resolve that. Now we go back into a pain stage. So think of a seasonal allergy. So every springtime, I'm miserable. I start my histamine reaction. That just means there is something in the springtime that you had a conflict that you've never really resolved. When you're away from the springtime time, then your body resolves it. But as soon as spring starts up again, your body says, oh, you've had a danger with this. We've got to start the histamine reaction again.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment of the shock, and here's the clincher, at this moment, your psyche, your subconscious picks up on everything around you, the season, the weather, what you just ate, who you just talked to, what the emotion is you're feeling, everything. Any one of those is an element that can start this whole program all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Pain itself can start this program all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a car accident and you have some whiplash, and we know that doctors would know that, okay, you'll be fine in 6 weeks. Let's say it's 6 months later and you still have whiplash. That's because you've had a conflict shock that has kept you on this pattern. You haven't been able to finish the program once and for all.
Okay.
Okay. So let me stop that and come back to you.
Well, I mean, that's are we talking about, and this is what we were having a conversation right before we started recording, my perspective on what I do to help people, and in your perspective, is this that conflict shock, that dynamic around, let's say, the seasonal allergies or the whiplash? You got the situation where I got hit by the semi, and now I'm in this conflict shock happened, and anything that's in and around of like that experience can throw me right back into that experience again. Are we talking about trauma? That's how I would, in my mind, how I would translate that.
Right. And so I understand that. And so trauma is a big buzzword right now. And there's a lot of work
Sure.
going on around trauma, which is awesome. We absolutely need that.
We got a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to say that not all trauma is a conflict shock. Okay, so a conflict shock is biological. It is not your emotion. It is not your mind. It is your biology saying, uh-oh, this is unexpected. Because it's unexpected, we're not sure we're safe. We need to start a program to help us survive.
Right. Conflict.
So that's what the program is. That's what a conflict shock is. It is biological.
Okay. And
there are emotions associated with it. There's a thought process associated with it. Of course, I lost my job. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Right? It's all those feelings and things, but that isn't what causes a program to begin. What causes it is the unexpectedness and our psyche, our subconscious saying, uh-oh, we are hardwired for survival. This is a survival issue. We need to start a program to adapt our tissues to help us survive this program, this experience.
So then what would be the example of a conflict shock that would be a trauma?
Oh God.
Well, we don't know. Like, I guess we don't know.
Right.
It depends on how the adaptability of the person. It's contextual based on the person who had that experience.
Exactly. So I always give the example, you're in a bank robber, you're just standing in line at the bank, and suddenly a robber comes in and points a gun at you. Right. And let's say there's 3 people in the lobby, and one of them might have a death fright conflict. Oh my God, I'm going to die. And that's going to impact in the lungs. Somebody else might think, how dare they come into my bank? And that will be a territorial marking conflict. So that's a UTI in the healing phase. Or somebody else, maybe the robber pushes them and their psyche interprets that as an attack conflict. So they will have a melanoma in the healing phase, in the conflict active phase. So it all depends on who you are. All of who you are, your birth order, your personality, your parents, the culture of your family, all of that makes up who you are, and thus how your psyche, your subconscious, perceives that event.
Okay, I have a personal example. This was a few years ago. I found out I was working with an osteopath at the time, and I had a issue where I had the name is escaping me, but I was having difficulty with my body healing, like small scratches. They wouldn't, my nervous system was kind of shot. I had some trauma. I basically, I'm going to ask you what your perspective of it would be, but this was around blackberry thorns, just a little nick from a blackberry thorn, and it would get, it was systemic where it was in my system where I couldn't heal what was going on from that.
Okay.
I'm really wanting to think of the word.
Was it were your symptoms systemic then?
Yes, it didn't matter.
Was it just on your skin? It just wasn't, they weren't healing.
They weren't healing.
Yeah.
And it would kind of heal over, not really heal over, but they would swell up. They would never actually get to over the hump of the heel. Yeah. So it was something systemic that was going on in my nervous system. I worked with a osteopath on it, just way next level. And he was working with vibration through the heel that released the shock from a legal thing that had come out of the blue.
Okay.
So that was my situation and scenario that had been going on. So how would the Germanic new medicine approach, how would that be a conflict shock, or would that be trauma, or
I'd have to go deeper than that, but on the surface level, just getting scratched is not a conflict shock, right? That's just something that happens. It's an accident.
So the conflict shock would have been when I got served with papers.
If you got served with papers, you were conflict active. You were in a heightened state.
Yeah.
Now you're injured in a heightened state, and so your body is not in a healing position.
Right.
And
right.
So it's further fight or flight, which is why you're just not going to heal that until your nervous system calms down, so that then you can go, remember, below the line in what we call vagatonia. That's when we heal. We don't heal when we're conflict active.
Got it. Okay. Well, you see, that's a perfect example. Okay, kids, all the listeners at home, that's my own personal example of how we disconnect from the experience. My focus was on the scratch that wasn't healing. So I'm focusing on that, when in actuality, it was months or years before. I'm not recalling exactly, that my nervous system had been in this fight or flight mode, that my nervous system was going down and going down and going down, that wasn't able to heal when summer came and I was in the woods in shorts with blackberry thorns, and then I have this issue. So this is a disconnect. Why we need outside help and support to see what's going on with pain, with anything we're dealing with.
You have to look at the bigger picture when it comes to pain, because most people look at, I've got pain in my stomach. I hear that all the time. It's like, okay, in GNM, we have to find the body part, because an organ may have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 biological programs that run. So we have to figure out which part of that organ has been affected. And then we know what the conflict was. And then that's when we can help you on moving through it and resolving it.
Got it.
And your pain goes away.
Okay, cool. So now when you work with a client, someone were to come to you with, most guests like to choose the knee
Yes.
okay, they would take the knee. They're filling out a questionnaire, you're asking them their experience. Is it like a check, lining it up? Is this more of a, some people that I've interviewed, they do muscle testing. How are you zeroing in on exactly what they need, what you need to do for them to get help?
Right. So my health history form is set up so that I get the information I need to help them best. So I'm finding out what's your number one symptom you want to work with. What's going on? Why are you coming to me? And what's the very number one thing? Now, some people will write down a diagnosis, which is okay. But again, I need the body part. So I look at that and it's like, okay, that could be 3 or 4 body parts. It all depends on what they're experiencing. Then I'm also looking at their list of traumas and their approximate dates, because the trauma, the conflict shock would have occurred before the pain, before the issue started.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
We develop a timeline.
Now, how far back are you going? How extensive is the process? Because we can go back. We could have had birth trauma that could be showing up.
We go in utero. We can go back to utero. We can go back to the first trimester of that.
Show up where we're fighting right after we're ready to fight, right after we're born.
Exactly.
So in utero, how are you able to zero in on that?
Usually people understand what was going on in their life when they were born. They hear stories, family stories.
Oh, okay.
About what was going on. So they have an idea. If their mom is still alive, then we can ask her as well.
Okay.
Now, we don't usually go back that far, but sometimes we do, especially for something like an injury. We don't go back that far. We go back to the injury and maybe a little bit previous to that.
Previous to the injury. So you're zeroing in more on the context of the injury, but then it's kind of like the sweater. You pull on the sweater, it starts to unravel, and it's like, oh, well, all these other things that happened.
Right. So, and that's true for skeletal muscular issues. Now, for organ pain, that's a little different. That's a little more intense. Well, I don't know if intense is the right word, but we do more digging. Skeletal muscular is pretty easy to move through. So it doesn't take a whole lot to do that generally.
And if you're talking to something, for instance, a knee issue, we can begin to tie knee issues in with organ systems and with meridians and things like that in the body, depending on the approach. So are you tying, you start on the muscular skeletal system, and then we could end up with something going on with the kidneys and the adrenals, or?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
Not at all. No, that would be a whole different system. And so that would be your traditional Chinese medicine.
Okay.
And what acupuncturists realized is that GNM is a perfect fit with TCM.
Oh,
I work with a lot of acupuncturists, and GNM gives them the last element they need to help that next person.
And in what way? Like, is it because there's not an is there there's no overlap isn't the correct word, but there is a complementary fit to it?
Yes. So when you look at Chinese medicine, it is the art of observation. They are observing the changes that our biological programs have in the body. So they're looking at GNM, they just don't know that they are, and they use a whole different language. But once they look at once they meld those two together, they have a whole new perspective and can use their needles or their herbs in a different fashion.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more, they're able to use the needles or their herbs in a different fashion in the locations of the needles or the technique, or I'm trying to.
That I don't know. You'd have
Oh,
to ask an
you have to ask an
acupuncturist. I'm
acupuncturist. Got
not
it.
one. So I just know that they're able to be more effective when they use GNM with what they're doing. With folks that they don't, with, if they're just doing straight acupuncture and they're having a hard time with someone when truly everything they're doing should work and it's not, then that's when GNM comes in, gives them a missing piece. Then they change whatever they're doing and they get better results.
Got it. And this is a practitioner coming to you, or this is a client that would be working with an acupuncturist that would be like, hey, I'm working with this acupuncturist and we hit this glass ceiling. Like, I'm not changing. Right. And you're giving a different perspective that they then go back to the acupuncturist?
Well, generally not. Usually, if acupuncturists feel like they need more information, that what they're doing isn't as effective as they want it to be, then they will eventually perhaps find GNM and get trained so they can use it with their clients. Now, I do have clients of mine who do go to acupuncture and their acupuncturist is not interested in learning GNM. So that person is kind of left with, okay, I've got to bridge this myself. And, they can do that to a point.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Education Corner. If you have a special talent or skill to relieve pain and you'd like to become a guest on our show, visit us at thecomellafoundation.org/interview. Help us spread the word on eliminating pain and suffering in the world. That's thecomellafoundation.org/interview.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my brain is going in the direction of, what are you giving to your client to help them? What does that look like?
That's a great question, because everyone always asks, well, what do I do now? Now that I know my conflict shock, I know why I have it. What do I do? And that's the what I always say is there's 7 billion people on this planet, so there are 7 billion responses. So that's individual to that person, and that's what I work with them to figure that out. Now, if they're on that hamster wheel, they've got that knee pain that they've had for 3 years, and it's not going away. We determine what's the conflict shock and what keeps it active, what keeps them on that hamster wheel. Once we figure that out, then sometimes the pain is instantly gone. I love it when that works. It doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it does. If it doesn't, then they're working on, okay, I need to change how I look at this. Pain becomes its own track. So pain begets pain. So we got to try to downgrade that. Maybe I'll do some herbs or supplements or something that will help boost their body. So their psyche then sees, oh, I'm feeling better. At the same time, they're working on not getting triggered over and over again.
Okay. The word that comes to mind that you had said, once you recognize this pattern that they're on, this conflict shock, and you gain that awareness and it resolves itself, quantum is the word that's popping into my head, where the observer changes the observed. The awareness provides the mode for change. And just the recognition of the pattern changes the pattern. So now you're working with the client in a way to bring to their conscious awareness the pattern that they're in, and the pattern changes just because they're now aware of the pattern that they're in.
Exactly. And so it's a journey that we go on. Now, I often know instantly what's going on and why, but I can't just tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
They have to discover it for themselves because I'm looking for that transformation to occur inside them. So I take them on a journey to help them find it.
Okay.
The answers are within.
Yeah, sure. Certainly. That's why we can't find them.
Yeah, exactly. And GNM gives us the roadmap. That's the key, because Dr. Hammer mapped out the entire brain. So we know what's going on with pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Well, once again, once you understand, here's a level, and it's the same sort of questions that I get when people ask me how I help people out of knee pain, is that, well, we create comfort by working with the intrinsic movement of the joint, and which allows a neurological change for the neurology of the knee to reorganize the body, to reorganize around the knee.
Yeah.
And then the body is more comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, how do we do that? Well, by working with the intrinsic movement of the joint. We find it's going to be different with each person. Yeah. So it leaves, there's a certain leap of faith that the person must have walking into a session or working with you. You had mentioned herbs, homeopathics. Are there other tools that you use besides that?
I'm a traditional naturopath, so I'm apt to use just about anything. I use a lot of proteolytic enzymes as well.
Okay.
To reduce inflammation that we have in the PCLA phase, the healing phase. Okay. And when we're stuck on that hamster wheel, we're in a chronic cycle, then we need to just support the body because it knows how to heal. It's just stuck. So we support the body as much as we can. And then we're working on reframing, and you can help them. You are helping them reframe in a whole different way, which is why you're effective. Anyone who's working with skeletal muscular issues is probably helping them reframe in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. They go to a massage therapist and then they feel better afterwards. Okay, the psyche sees that. It knows that. Mm-hmm. So it's now lifted itself out of that healing phase a bit.
Okay. I'm following you. Now, when you work with somebody with knee pain, you begin to recognize the pattern that they're in. You give them homeopathic herbs.
I usually don't. Usually they come to me after having done so many supplements and they're so frustrated because they didn't work.
Okay.
But that's who I usually get. It's like they've been to all the functional medicine doctors. They've been to all the everything, and they're just so fed up. They don't usually do things. So I don't usually, I can and I will, if they're looking for, well, what can I take? And I make sure they understand this is simply supporting the process. In order to resolve this pain, you have to finish it up in your psyche, in your nervous system. It has to shift on a subconscious level. Mm-hmm. Now, if that homeopathy and that herb can help them to shift, I'm all for it. But it doesn't do the job. You have to also work at it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where I've had many times, I've had lots of really awesome mentors in my life. And there's a place where I knew I needed to do the work, and asking questions wasn't going to clarify anything at all. So in a way, when I look at that chart, the New Germanic healing looks really complicated, but in actuality, it's super simple.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. Yes, if you want to learn it all, you can spend years learning it, and I'm still learning it. However, what one person needs is not that hard, and it's all common sense.
Yeah.
We're not talking, you've got to go learn a new foreign language here. You don't have to learn German.
Go. Well,
Um,
good.
right. But you do need to look inside yourself,
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form. And we do not analyze toilet training. This is not psychotherapy. We do not do that
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Hmm.
This is about simply interrupting the pattern. We need to
Interrupting.
distract that mind. If it just triggered the program again, we need to instantly distract it so the conflict active phase is less,
Mm-hmm.
and thus the healing phase will be less.
Huh. Okay.
It's amazing.
Well, is there anything else in that?
I think that the biggest thing for folks is they want a quick fix.
Uh-huh.
And, it's especially when they've tried everything, they've had in pain for years and years, and they want a quick fix. This is not a quick fix. And yet for some people, it is,
It
and
can
so
happen.
it can
Yeah.
happen. Right.
Yeah. When you align with the nervous system defaults to healing. That's all it wants to do. It's just got to get out of the way. We got to remove what is in the way, preventing it from doing so.
Yes. And so that's all it is. It's just getting out of that cycle by recognizing it and changing how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of responding with anger, now we're going to respond with compassion or acceptance. And right there,
Or
we haven't triggered that program. So now the pain does not develop.
got it. Or maybe like baby steps, maybe a little bit less anger.
Exactly. So, we work with everyone where they're at.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, that's really important. But what I do in my initial course, I have a foundational course for people, and there's 8 activity sheets in it because you have to understand how it works in your body. So you're learning the theory of it, and then you're relating it to your symptoms. And that is very, very important because you have to have a connection inside your body. And I'm speaking about practitioners who take my course. You have to work on yourself first before you can help others.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for that transformation in folks.
Okay. So you work with both clients who would be looking for support with their pain, and then you also do training as well for those who would interested in be a practitioner.
Correct. Yes. And I tend to do more training. I consult with my students mostly. But I also run a mentorship program so that there's only so many hours in the day for me. So if somebody comes in and needs some help, I'm able to bring them over to one of the people who have been through my course, and I'm in touch with them and we work together. And that just frees me up a little bit because I am training literally all over the world right now, virtually.
Nice.
But yeah. So there's a group of practitioners, absolutely, that are very, very good with pain and any other dis-ease or program that you are running. So, yeah.
And that was the organization you were telling me about? Is that the same?
This is a little bit different. So there's 2 things here. I have my mentor program, and that's called GNM Care, and that's on my website.
Okay.
And you can find a mentor.
Okay.
And then I also run an international organization that is for practitioners who use GNM, GHK with their clients. And it's basically support and networking and education as well. So 2 different organizations, 2 different things. My website, gnmcare.com, andilockemears.com, but it's the GNM Care program. Those are my mentees. I work with them to help more clients out. And then the ghkglobal.org organization.
GHK Global. Got it.
And those folks are all across North America and Australia.
Okay. And we had spoken about before on our first call.
Yeah.
Do you work with clients? I guess I'm assuming you work with clients remotely.
Yes. At this
Okay.
point, it's all remote, and it was for several years before the 2020 occurred.
2020 years.
Yes,
That year.
that year. Yes, it's all remote. Yes.
Awesome. So you would be available, and this is something that we're working on setting up through the Comella Foundation, essentially like a portal where we would have one of our members does muscle testing, can do remote muscle testing. So they could go down and figure out someone who is looking for help with pain. You know, it's like, all right, I need help. I don't know who to ask. And you got this big laundry list of people, and all their names would look the same because, well, that's what happens when you're in pain, that you would be able to have a real quick, like 5-minute, 10-minute muscle testing session with her that could then go, oh, Andi would be able to help you. Here, you could watch the interview that she did with Bill, and then you could sign up for a consultation with her.
Right. It would either be with me or one of my people.
Right, exactly. And that's where how we could figure that out, work out the details offline. Well, we can work out what would make sense. But yeah, that's kind of cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Do you have anything else anything that we talked about? I know it kind of got to this place where it's like when you explained everything, it was like, Bill didn't have any more questions to ask.
That's okay.
Because it's simple. It's simple, like my approach. It's simple. And a lot of times it's difficult, especially when you're in pain, especially when you're trying to figure things out, to be like, oh, that's it. Come on. There's gotta be more. But no,
right. It can definitely be that simple and that easy. And for some people it is. For other folks, it takes a little bit more. And that's why Dr. Hammer said that when you know GNM, it's all about personal development. So it really means, okay, now it's time to develop new skills on how to live inside your head. And this is the ultimate personal development growth that needs to occur for you with that particular pain.
Right.
So it's quite an amazing journey. And I've seen total miracles occur.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Andi, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I'm just racking my brain. There must be something.
Yeah, there must be something. Well, I'll tell you what, we could leave it open for a future, have you on the podcast again in the future. If there's something that comes up, specific topic or something that you're working with that you're like, hey, this would be good to talk with Bill about, we could record it and make it something we could share.
Absolutely. And if people watching this have questions, we could develop, compile their questions and get on and do another one and answer those questions.
Totally. That sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Bill.
Well, Andi, I want to thank you so much for being here. This was fun.
Yes, absolutely. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Okay. Well, once again, thank you, Andi, for being here. This is Bill Paravano, the knee pain guru, on behalf of the Pain Education Podcast, brought to you by the Comella Foundation. Just appreciating, so grateful for everything. And I wish you a wonderful day, and have a wonderful day. And we'll see everybody on the next video.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this week's segment of the Pain Education Corner. Join us next week for another conversation on natural healing methods to eliminate pain. To learn more about the work we do at the Comella Foundation, please visit our website at the Comella, Comella Foundation.org. org.